Christine Cheatham, and Rick.
If you remember at the end of the last meeting, it was Jeff's suggestion that we invite the Board of Selectmen, Town Council, the ZBA to a meeting to discuss the apparent process violations of at least one board member and two other members who were complicit in it, of submitting without a public knowledge or process that is given to the board members a citizen's petition that directly contradicted the majority vote to engage in a collaborative discussion with the ZBA about transferring site plan review from the ZBA to the planning board. That's really what kicked off this whole discussion. That's why the Board of Selectmen, Town Council, and the ZBA were invited. And I think the feeling
And
was...
you took it upon yourself to invite.
No, I didn't. Ed, you're not listening. Jeff suggested, and the board agreed, that the Board of Selectmen should be invited. Jeff, you can speak for yourself.
There was discussion about this issue last time, and there was discussion about the lack of a better term, political implications of what was being talked about. And and we had a concern that there may be some misunderstanding among the zoning board of appeals and the selectmen as to what happened. So the thought was, why don't we invite them here so they can find out what happened, because my understanding was there was at least an allegation that some of those people were upset. And so we wanted to minimize whatever damage it might have been occurred. That was the idea.
You said they were upset. How do you know they were upset?
That was one of the things that was said at the last meeting. I wasn't involved in any of this. I haven't spoken with any selectmen, ZBA. I wasn't involved in the citizen's petition, any discussions with anybody about it. I was here at the last meeting, and there was discussion at the last meeting about the fact that the ZBA and some of the Board of Selectmen may have been upset about what happened. So we all, I think at my suggestion, agreed that to the extent that that was true, let's invite them to the meeting so they understand what happened, and just as importantly, what didn't happen.
All right, so that's what we are, on information. At least tonight, we'll get some information about how this all came to pass and what we might do about it, if anything. Deborah, do you know why you're here tonight? I mean, Dawn,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
She's here.
I don't mean that sarcastically. I meant it in regard to the agenda. It says open meeting law guidance by Donna Brewer.
Yes, I was asked to just give a general overview of the open meeting law and how it is affected or not by the actions of members of the planning board who signed a citizen's petition and presumably had discussions about that petition, which is a matter within the authority of the planning board, had discussions about that outside of a posted meeting. So that's the issue that I was asked to address. I was really, I think, the letter of concern that I guess Rick will talk about later outlined some specific questions that he had that related to open meeting law, so I used those as a template for trying to answer any issues that come up. Before I go into giving you my opinions and advice, I will let the board know you have the right to get my opinions and advice in executive session. So that's a decision for the board to make, whether to go into the executive session to get legal advice and opinions, or you can do it in open session and then the attorney-client privilege will be waived. It's up to you guys, whichever way you want to go.
Can I ask a question? Do you feel that there's a legal reason or a doubt on procedures? Because we don't really want to have citizen interference with the board. We wanted to have a letting down of the hair and seeking of guidance, which I don't think, I'm worried about the public hearing that as such.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if there have been some infractions, then, and we're going to report to the AG or something, then I think we ought to seek your counsel as to how the board should correct its actions if there are any, I don't think there are any real board actions that are citizen actions.
Well, that's the question, and I'll try to answer that as best that I can. But honestly, if I answer that, then I'm releasing my opinion. Because if I tell you, no, you should go into executive session, then I'm saying my opinion is that there's something that went wrong.
Well, being one of the accused, I have no desire to be in executive session.
Well, it's a decision of the board. The
Well,
board
I'm just
has,
speaking for my,
Sure.
my part of the board, all right? I've done nothing wrong, and I want the public to know that I have done nothing wrong. Now, one of the other accused is Claudia, so she can speak for herself, whether you want to be in executive session or not, I guess I would like to hear, and then I'd like to hear from the rest of the board.
I think she's asking for the board's opinion.
I'm asking for the board to make a decision on whether or not you want to have this as a privileged conversation or in an open session. That's not my call,
I think
that's
I would
always
like
the
to
call
see
of the client.
I guess I'd like to understand who asked you to speak and what you know is secondhand, isn't it?
To answer your first question, I got an email from Christine saying that the planning board wanted me to be here. If that's an error and a majority of the planning board doesn't want to hear from me, that's your call as well. But if that's not correct, and the planning board does want to hear from me, then I'm happy to give you my opinion. As for whether it's secondhand or not, some of it is, some of it isn't. And I've seen the citizen petition and I've seen who signed it.
So, question on the legality. Is it in your opinion, the board may face some incumbent liability?
Do you want me to give that opinion in open session? I keep coming back to this, guys.
No, that's fine. I'm not thinking that's evasive. I'm just testing the boundaries to understand if I can make an informed decision relative to going into an executive session. So I'm going to draw the conclusion that by not having you answer that the board is likely facing some potential liability.
Do you want to make a motion? Because I will if you don't.
I'm not ready to make a motion, so please do.
Well, I'd make a motion that we go into executive session. I believe there's some embarrassing things that occurred, and I think it would be appropriate to find out whether there are legal liabilities associated with it. So I would recommend going into executive session. I so move.
Is there a second?
You know, I'm gonna second that, and I'll tell you why. My first
Could you
inclination.
speak up?
Yeah, I second it, my first inclination was definitely not. However, and it's probably because I'm a lawyer, but it's better to know things that you need to know before you make decisions. And I think that if we hear about things in executive session, we can always then decide to go back into regular session and disclose everything we learned. But my concern is if we make a decision to stay in regular session and then find out something that we regret having done for the town, because it's the board issue here, it's not individuals, the town, then I think that we would have made a mistake. So I think that we should do that. I think that's the more conservative route, not having been through this before in my entire life, so.
And I would just add that, you know, it's being taped for public just broadcasting or something, so I frankly don't think this is the time to do so in public.
Well, it may be after we hear executive session, just go, that's
Do you have
my.
any comment?
No, I agree. I mean, that's a rational take on the whole thing. I have no problem going into executive session. I mean, and like you said, we can disclose whatever we want to disclose after that.
So the only thing I'll say for your motion, Peter, is you should add to it that you will be returning to open
Returning.
session.
Yes, we will return to an executive session.
So,
As will-
Open session.
Rick?
I'll, on on the advice of counsel, that's also a fellow planning board member, I'm gonna say yes, we probably should go into executive session to learn what the facts are and recommendations are of council.
Claudia?
I don't know the answer, to be honest with you, I don't.
I'll restate my position so that it's well understood, that I am guilty of nothing, and I want the town of Hamilton to know exactly everything that's transpassed. There is no reason to be in executive session because there is nothing to hide. If
Should we take a vote?
you can, when I finish my discussion, we can
Oh,
take
sorry.
a vote. I'm worried because Claudia has not expressed an opinion, but I guess she isn't going to. So all those in favor of going into executive session, and this is, what did you say, Deborah? This is Donna, I'm sorry. This is
To return.
to come back to, it's an executive session, and then we're coming back to it.
An executive session for the purpose of obtaining legal advice, and you will be returning to open session.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
So just so it's clear, because there's a tape,
Yes.
the ayes, Brian, Rick, Peter, me, the nays were Ed, and abstention by Claudia, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. And